As a longtime fan of Star Trek, the original series, I didn't expect Strange New Worlds to make me laugh quite as hard as it did during Season 3. The show has always done a brilliant job of balancing drama, character growth, and classic Trek philosophy. But in Season 3, Strange New Worlds delivers something even more delightful, a laugh-out-loud callback to one of the silliest, most memorable, and most endearingly oddball moments from the original series. We're talking tribbles. We're talking Shakespearean melodrama. And yes, we're talking Spock being just a little too comfortable with 20th century Earth sarcasm. But the callback I am referring to isn't just a throwaway joke, it's layered, cleverly timed, and perhaps most impressively, it serves both the comedy and the characters in equal measure. In true Trek fashion, the moment honors the past while enhancing the present. And it's now firmly my favorite comedic homage in Strange New Worlds so far. The scene, a Kirk, a Spock, and a Toga walk into a planet. The callback in question takes place in Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 4, titled Of Gods and Gallows. The crew of the Enterprise visits a strange Class M planet that through a series of barely explained but we accept it because it's Star Trek anomalies, has modeled its society after ancient Rome, with a theatrical twist. The inhabitants speak in flowery prose, wear togas with dramatic flair, and settle diplomatic disputes with staged performances judged by a literal council of critics. And the moment hits when the away team, consisting of Captain Pike, Spock, and Lon, is captured by the locals and forced to participate in a theatrical reenactment of their greatest internal conflict. Naturally, this leads to Lon and Pike preparing for an overly dramatic reading of a fictionalized Starfleet tribunal. But Spock, attempting to understand the cultural expectations, stuns everyone by launching into an emotional Shakespearean-style monologue about logic, betrayal, and a very confused memory of Hamlet. It's hilarious. But it's also incredibly familiar. Because the way Spock delivers it, his posture, the cadence, the slightly too committed eye contact, feels like a direct callback to the original series' infamous episode, Plato's Stepchildren. The original absurdity, Plato's Stepchildren, and Spock's musical breakdown. Plato's Stepchildren is a TOS episode often remembered for two things. The first televised interracial kiss in U.S. history between Kirk and Uhura, and the utterly bonkers sequence where Spock is forced to sing and cry while playing a Vulcan lyre. The scene was played for tragedy, but it ended up becoming one of the most unintentionally funny and meme-worthy moments in all of Star Trek. Seeing Leonard Nimoy, the epitome of Vulcan stoicism, weeping and singing while compelled by alien telekinesis was surreal. For decades, fans have both mocked and cherished that episode, and not always for the reasons the writers intended. Strange New Worlds knows this, and it leans into it beautifully. How Strange New Worlds turns camp into comedy gold. What makes the callback in Of Gods and Gallows so brilliant is its subtlety. The show doesn't try to recreate the scene exactly, it captures the energy of it. Spock begins a seemingly rational explanation of their diplomatic intentions, but then his tone shifts, his eyebrows arch with uncharacteristic flair, and he begins gesturing dramatically while quoting what sounds like a fusion of Shakespeare and Vulcan proverbs. At one point, he declares, "To know logic is to wield a sword against chaos, and yet I find myself unarmed in a tempest of emotion." It's exactly the kind of overwrought line you'd expect from Spock under alien influence in TOS. Lon shoots Pike a look like she's this close to bursting into laughter. Pike, to his credit, deadpans it, but you can tell Anson Mount is playing the moment with a twinkle in his eye. Even the alien judge applauds Spock's commitment to character. And in true Strange New Worlds fashion, the scene doesn't just exist for laughs. The society they're dealing with values performative honesty, and Spock's melodrama ends up helping them gain the trust they need to complete the mission. The callback becomes a plot device as well as a comedic gem. Why this callback works so well? Strange New Worlds has always understood the assignment when it comes to honoring TOS. Instead of mocking the source material, it recontextualizes it with affection. That's what makes this particular callback so satisfying. It doesn't pretend that Plato's Stepchildren wasn't ridiculous, but it doesn't ridicule it either. It says, "We know this was silly, but wasn't it also iconic?" Even better, the callback is layered into Spock's development. In Strange New Worlds, Spock is still wrestling with his human side, sometimes leaning into emotions in a way that would make his older self raise an eyebrow. So when he embraces theatricality, not because he's forced to, but because he genuinely thinks it might help, it tells us something about how far he's come since Season 1. It's also a clever bit of growth when you consider TOS Spock would likely have found such behavior embarrassing. The callback acts as a mirror. What once was awkward is now endearing, maybe even admirable. Comedy in Trek, a balancing act. Comedy in Star Trek has always been a delicate balance. Lean too far into the absurd, and you risk turning a sci-fi drama into self-parody. But ignore humor entirely, and you miss out on one of the most humanizing aspects of the franchise. TOS had its fair share of comedic episodes, intentional or not. The Trouble with Tribbles, a piece of the action, and yes, Plato's stepchildren are all iconic in their own right. Strange New Worlds doesn't shy away from that legacy. Instead, it embraces it while giving it a modern polish. Spock's over-the-top monologue in Season 3 is a prime example of this balance. It's self-aware without being smug. It's funny without being farcical. And it pays homage to the past without needing the audience to get the joke to enjoy the moment. What it says about Spock and us? Part of why this callback resonated so much with me is that it shows Spock as a character who's learning to take himself a little less seriously. That's not a betrayal of his Vulcan heritage, it's an evolution. He's not abandoning logic. He's using it in creative, unexpected ways. And isn't that the core of Star Trek? Using science, logic, and empathy to navigate the unknown? Even if that means occasionally quoting Hamlet on a planet ruled by critics in togas. It also reminds fans that humor has always had a place in the Star Trek universe. It's not just about exploration, it's about joy, absurdity, and occasionally laughing at yourself. The legacy of a single laugh. By the end of Gods and Gallows, Spock's performance is praised as the most stirring soliloquy the Council has ever witnessed. Lon deadpans, "You've missed your calling." Spock replies, with perfect dryness, "I was not aware it had gone missing." It's such a small moment, but one that stuck with me long after the episode ended. Because it showed how Strange New Worlds isn't just referencing TOS for nostalgia points. It's using those moments to enrich the characters, deepen the themes, and remind us why we fell in love with Star Trek in the first place. For a show that began as a prequel to the original series, Strange New Worlds has more than earned its place among the franchise's best. And when it makes us laugh, not just at the universe, but with it, it captures something special. Final thoughts. Strange New Worlds Season 3 gave me my favorite funny callback to the original series, not because it recreated a scene shot for S,